He thought he was just flexing authority on another young black traveler, until she calmly told him, "I'm calling my father." What he didn't know, her dad owns the airline she just flew in on. You ever land somewhere familiar and still feel completely out of place? Zariah Tillman had just touched down at LAX after a 4.5-hour flight from Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta. Her head ached from the recycled cabin air and too much small talk. She didn't bother rushing. Off the plane like everyone else. She'd learned to slow down when others sped up. That's when you notice the details, the glances, the weight behind certain looks. She adjusted the strap on her cream leather duffel, stepped through the jet bridge, and followed the stream of passengers toward baggage claim. Her mom had texted during the layover, "I'll be in the pickup lane. Call when you're at the curb. Love you, Z." Zariah smiled just thinking about her. She wore a sand-colored two-piece knit set and crisp white sneakers. Effortless, not showy. Her braids were neatly tied up, a gold cuff wrapped around one, just like her dad liked when she was younger. He said it made her look focused. The first-class ticket was still tucked into the sleeve of her passport. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, just comfortable in her skin, like always. But airports have a strange way of making you feel watched, especially when you're not the expected type. She felt it before she saw him, the man with the stiff stance and gleaming badge. Officer Brent Mallory, posted just past the first checkpoint. He didn't scan crowds, he scanned individuals. Eyes narrow, jaw clenched, like he was waiting for someone to mess up. Zariah wasn't in a rush. She checked her phone and kept walking, but his eyes stuck to her like glue. "Excuse me, miss," came his voice, direct, clipped. She turned. "Yes?" "Can you step over here for me?" She blinked. "What for?" "Random screening. No wand, no scanner, no screening setup. In sight, just him and a small podium. I already cleared security in Atlanta. I'm just trying to get to baggage claim." "Ma'am, I asked you to step over here." His tone sharpened. She glanced around. People passed without pause. A young white guy in a Dodgers jersey strolled by, earbuds in, huge duffel slung over one shoulder. A woman in heels barely noticed them. But now, eyes crept in. Some curious, some cautious, most uninterested, but all aware. Zariah stepped over, calm and square-shouldered. "Is there something specific you need to see?" "Just answering some questions. Flight details, identification, that kind of thing." She handed him her boarding pass. Flight 422 from ATL. First class, seat 2D. He stared at it longer than necessary. "First class?" "Yeah." Mallory didn't hand it back right away. "Is there a problem?" she asked. "No problem, just doesn't add up." Her eyes narrowed. "What doesn't?" "You. This ticket." He finally handed it back, slower this time. "You don't exactly look like our typical first-class passenger." Each word landed like a deliberate drop, measured, heavy. Zariah's chest tensed, but her face didn't flinch. "And what does a typical first-class passenger look like to you?" He smirked. A twitch at the corner of his mouth like he was waiting for her to get loud, to make a scene. She didn't. She slid the ticket into her passport and met his eyes. "I'm going to baggage claim now." "I didn't say you could leave." "You didn't say why I had to stop." He stepped closer, not quite threatening, just enough to assert something invisible. It hung in the air between them. "I'm asking the questions." Zariah let a full second pass. "And I'm asking if you have a reason to detain me." Mallory's brow twitched. He didn't answer. He wasn't used to being checked, especially not like this. Zariah wasn't scared. She was calculating. And the next thing she did would change everything. There's a look people get when they realize control is slipping. Mallory wore it now. Zariah didn't move. She stood steady, passport in one hand, phone in the other, her thumb hovering just above the screen. Not calling. Yet. Not reacting, just watching, with the same quiet patience she'd learned from her father, the kind that wasn't passive. It was power, held in reserve. Mallory shifted his stance, still trying to play gatekeeper. "Where were you coming from?" "I told you, Atlanta." "Purpose of the trip?" "Personal." "How long were you there?" "I was born there. I visit family every few months." "You have identification to confirm that?" "Like my ID?" "Yes." She handed over her California driver's license. It was clean, valid, nothing questionable. He still held it like he was doing her a favor by giving it back. "You always fly first class?" "Not always. My dad booked this one." Mallory sniffed like he'd caught her in a lie. "Must be nice." Zariah didn't bite. He circled, not physically but with questions, asking the same things with slight variations, trying to trip her up: bags, seat number, time she boarded, who picked her up in Atlanta, where she stayed, when she booked the ticket. People were watching now. Not a full crowd, but enough. A woman near Starbucks made eye contact, then quickly looked away when Mallory turned. A baggage handler slowed his cart, pretending to check tags. Zariah's voice stayed cool. She'd been taught never to match someone else's anger in public. That's how they flip the script on you. But inside, her stomach burned. "What is this really about?" she asked finally. Mallory smiled, barely. "Like I said, routine. No one else from my flight is getting questioned. You don't know that. I was one of the first off the plane. I watched them walk right past you. You're getting defensive. I'm asking you to explain what's going on. That's not defensive. That's fair." He stepped in again, just a little closer. "You've got a little attitude. You've got a lot of assumptions." That one landed. Quietly, sharply. He stared at her, jaw tense. His voice dropped. "Look, lady, I don't care how much that ticket cost or who paid for it. People who act like they're better than everyone else usually have something to hide." Zariah almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so tired, so weak. "Better than everyone else," she echoed. "You don't know anything about me." He ignored her. "I see this a lot." She flew in like she owned the place, mouthing off when asked the simplest questions, as if I hadn't seen this show before. She was done, quiet now. Without saying a word, she unlocked her phone and tapped a name in her favorites. Mallory raised, an eyebrow, amused. "Who you calling?" She met his gaze, steady. "My father." "Oh, sure, let me guess. Lawyer, congressman, CEO?" Zariah didn't answer. The phone rang twice, then picked up. "Z, you good?" Calm, smooth, and steady. His voice wrapped around her like armor. "Daddy," she said, soft but clear. "I need you at Terminal 4 Southwest. Baggage claim level. There's an officer here who thinks I don't belong." Pause. Silence. "I'm on my way." That was all. No questions, no raised voice. He just knew. Zariah ended the call and slid the phone into her back pocket. Mallory chuckled. "That's supposed to scare me?" She lifted a brow. "You'll find out soon enough." Neither of them realized just how soon things would shift, or who was already walking into the building. 5 minutes can stretch like an hour when silence thickens the air. Mallory shifted his weight. Something itched under his skin, not from being openly challenged, but from the quiet certainty of someone who wasn't afraid of him. Zariah stood still, not smug, not shaken, just there. Passengers trickled by. A man in khakis glanced over, then back at his phone. A mother pulled her daughter closer. The air wasn't hostile, but cautious. Everyone waiting, watching. "You always this dramatic?" Mallory asked. "You always this wrong?" She shot back without blinking. He laughed, but it didn't land. His earlier confidence was already unraveling. From behind the glass doors leading to the admin offices, a woman in a gray blazer stepped out. Her name tag read T. Ramirez. She scanned the scene quickly, then moved toward them with crisp purpose. "Everything all right here?" Her tone was professional, clipped. "I've got it under control," Mallory said, not even looking at her. "I wasn't asking you," Ramirez replied. That was the first crack. Mallory turned, caught off guard. "This is routine protocol. Passenger was acting evasive." "She wasn't evasive," Ramirez cut in. "She was standing in line with her documents in hand. I just reviewed the footage from 2 minutes ago." Zaria didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Ramirez turned to her. "Ma'am, do you feel unsafe?" Zaria met her eyes. "No. Just tired, and being stopped without cause isn't exactly new to me." Ramirez's jaw flexed slightly. "I'm sorry you were made to feel like this. If you'd like to file a report, I can escort you to the office." "Not yet," Zaria said. "My father's on his way. I'll speak with him first." Something in that sentence gave Ramirez pause. "Your father?" Before she could answer, 2 black SUVs pulled up just outside the sliding doors. VIP lane, the kind of zone that gets cleared without a word. The lead SUV's passenger door opened. A tall man in a navy suit stepped out. Dark skin, gray at the temples, calm shoulders, his face unreadable. His walk, purposeful, not aggressive, not arrogant, just assured. The kind of man who's walked into countless rooms that didn't expect him and always left them changed. Zaria exhaled. Mallory squinted. "Who is that?" Ramirez already knew. "That's Reginald Tillman." "The Reginald Tillman?" Mallory asked, the first trace of doubt in his voice. She nodded. "Owner of WestJet Air, one of the 5 major stakeholders in this terminal." Mallory opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "You're telling me she's his daughter?" Tillman entered like he'd done it 100 times. No hurry, no scan of the room. He walked straight to Zaria. She looked up, smiled just barely, but it was real. "Hey, Daddy?" He kissed her forehead. "You all right?" "I'm fine now." Tillman turned to Mallory. No handshake, no pleasantries, just a look. "You the one who stopped my daughter?" Mallory straightened. "Sir, I was following." "I didn't ask what you thought you were doing," Tillman said. His voice wasn't loud, but it landed heavy. Ramirez stepped forward, hands clasped. "Mr. Tillman, I apologize. This wasn't cleared. I've already requested the footage. We'll begin an internal review." "I'd like a full report by end of day," he said, "and someone from your office will speak with my legal team." Then he looked back at Mallory. "You saw a young woman standing in line, dressed, clean, first-class ticket, and your instinct was to embarrass her. You picked the wrong daughter, on the wrong day." Mallory couldn't speak, not because he had nothing to say, but because nothing he said would help him now. And the day wasn't over. What came next would pull back the curtain on more than just one officer's mistake. Some people make noise when they enter a room. Others change the temperature just by standing in it. Reginald Tillman was the second kind. And the staff? They started standing straighter the moment they saw him. 2 TSA agents who'd been watching from the hallway turned away and pretended to busy themselves with paperwork. Even the airport police captain, a man named Felix Orton, seemed to shift gears, suddenly moving at a different speed, trying to catch up to something that had already begun unfolding. Zaria stood still while her father spoke, his voice even, deliberate. He didn't raise it. He didn't have to. Mallory had gone from smug to silent, his hands now tucked behind his back, like a kid waiting to be scolded. But Reginald didn't yell. That would have been too easy, and, frankly, too generous. He leaned in slightly toward Mallory. "Dites-moi, qu'est-ce qui vous a fait décider qu'elle était suspecte?" Mallory hesitated, suddenly evasive. "No," Reginald continued. "She answered your questions clearly, repeatedly." "I didn't recognize her name on the manifest." You don't read the manifest. You're not airline staff. Mallory's mouth opened, then closed again. Reginald didn't look angry. He looked bored, like he'd seen this movie 100 times and didn't need to sit through the ending. You weren't doing your job, Reginald said finally. You were flexing your badge because you could, and because you thought no one would care. The silence that followed filled every corner of the terminal. Ramirez stepped forward gently. Mr. Tillman, I've already begun documenting the incident. I'll personally handle the follow-up. I'm sure you will, he interrupted, but let me be clear. I didn't come here for apologies. Her face tightened slightly. Understood. Reginald turned to Zariah. Did he touch you? No. Did he threaten you? No. But he made me feel small. Zariah nodded. That was enough. Reginald looked back at Mallory. You will not be working this terminal again. Whether you keep your badge, that's for your department. But here, you're done. Mallory swallowed hard. Sir, I'm not sir to you. A second later, Captain Orton stepped in. Mr. Tillman, I'll take it from here. Reginald didn't even look at him. Make sure you do. Orton gestured to Mallory. Come with me. The officer hesitated, just long enough to remind everyone he still believed in whatever authority he thought he had. But he followed. They disappeared behind a side door. For the first time in nearly 20 minutes, the air in the terminal began to breathe again. Ramirez exhaled slowly. She handled herself well. She always does, Reginald replied, not missing a beat. She's had practice. Zariah glanced down. She didn't want praise. She wanted this not to be a pattern. Reginald turned to her. You ready? She nodded. Let's go. They began walking toward the exit. The crowd had thinned. Some people had filmed part of it. She saw one teenage boy lowering his phone a little too late, but no one said anything. The respect in the air wasn't loud. It was quiet, measured, like people knew something real had just happened, even if they couldn't quite name it. Outside, the sun had dipped low behind the parking structure, casting long shadows across the pavement. The SUVs were waiting. A driver opened the door, but Reginald held out a hand. Z, he said, walk with me. They passed the car and kept walking down the sidewalk, away from the noise. I knew something was wrong, the ikuti. Second, I answered, he said softly. I kept thinking maybe it would stop, she said, that if I just stayed calm. It was never about calm. I know. You handled it better than I would have at your age. Zariah half smiled. That's because you didn't teach me to yell. You taught me to aim. He gave a low laugh. Well, seems like you hit your mark. But what Zariah didn't realize yet was that what happened next, once they got in that car, would stay with her far longer than the confrontation ever could. The SUV's back seat was cool and quiet, a small bubble of peace as the world outside continued. Spinning, Zariah leaned back and looked out the tinted window, watching the terminal shrink behind them. It felt further away than it actually was. Reginald sat beside her, phone in hand. He wasn't texting, just scanning emails, fingers still, eyes moving fast. What's going to happen to him? Zariah asked. Reginald didn't look up. Mallory? She nodded. That depends on his department. He might get suspended, maybe reassigned. He won't be back at LAX. Zariah exhaled. That's it. He finally turned toward her. You wanted more. I don't know. She crossed her arms. Part of me wanted him to be embarrassed, the way he tried to embarrass me. Reginald nodded slowly. I understand that, but I'm not here to give people what they gave us. I'm here to make sure they don't do it again. Zariah was quiet for a second. That's not justice. That's management. It's both, he replied. Sometimes cleaning house is how you start fixing the foundation. She didn't argue, but her jaw tightened. It wasn't about revenge. It was about respect, and she hated how quickly it was taken from her by someone who had no right to question it in the first place. As the SUV merged onto Century Boulevard, Reginald's phone buzzed. He answered. "Go ahead." Pause. "Have legal reach out before noon tomorrow." Pause again. "Yes, the statement goes out tonight. Tell them to keep it simple. Nothing performative." He hung up and looked back at Zariah. "Your story's already circulating. Someone filmed it." "I figured," she said. "They didn't capture the full story, just the tail end. Your stand, me showing up. People will twist it into something it wasn't." He shrugged. "Let them. The truth is simple enough." Back at the airport, Officer Brent Mallory sat stiffly across from two internal affairs reps in a small interview room. One wall had a clock, the other a mirror that he was sure was two-way. A laminated poster above his head read, "Accountability builds trust." He didn't speak much. The footage had already spoken for him. Later that night, the airline issued a statement, short, professional, and direct. "We do not tolerate bias, discrimination, or misuse of authority in any form. The incident involving Zariah Tillman is being thoroughly reviewed in coordination with airport security leadership." Zariah's phone buzzed again, messages pouring in. Some from friends who had seen the clip, others from numbers she didn't recognize. A few were congratulatory. A couple were angry. "You're going to get reactions from both sides," Reginald said calmly. "That's the nature of truth. It makes people uncomfortable." "I didn't want to be anyone's symbol." "You're not a symbol. You're my daughter, a person. This just happened." "And you handled it," he added. She looked down at her hands. "Why does it happen so much?" Reginald didn't answer right away. The SUV slowed near the entrance to their building, in Baldwin Hills. "Because some people confuse authority with permission," he said finally. "They think a badge makes them bigger, smarter, safer. And when they meet someone who doesn't flinch, they feel small." The car stopped and the driver opened Zariah's door. She stepped out, then turned to face her father. "Do I have to keep proving myself every time?" He stepped out beside her, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything. But when the moment comes, you show them who they're talking to." Zariah didn't smile. Not quite, but there was something steady in her eyes now. "Then let them talk." The real weight of what happened, what it meant for her name and her future, would hit later when a quiet post she wrote reached 1 million. Overnight. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Zariah sat at the breakfast bar, spooning yogurt, though she wasn't really eating. Her phone buzzed every few seconds and the notifications flashed like fireflies. Twitter threads, TikTok, stitches, DMs from strangers calling her brave, classy, beautiful. A few, of course, were hateful. There always were. She didn't respond to any of it. The clip had gone viral overnight. Barely 90 seconds of grainy phone footage. A young black woman standing tall, staring down a uniformed officer at LAX. The way she didn't raise her voice. The way she didn't shrink. But that wasn't the part everyone kept talking about. They were talking about the moment Reginald Tillman stepped through the doors, the subtle shift in power, the way Mallory's body language changed the second he realized who he was dealing with. Zariah refreshed her feed again. WestJet had reposted their official statement. Her name wasn't in it, but everyone already knew. Her father entered the room quietly, dressed as he always was in the morning. Tailored slacks, dress shirt, no tie yet. He poured himself coffee and took the seat next to her. "You okay?" he asked. "I guess." "That doesn't sound like a yes." She exhaled. "I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. Part of me wants to pretend it didn't happen, but another part wants to go louder, say everything I didn't get to say yesterday." Reginald stirred his coffee. "So say it. To who?" He looked at her like she already knew the answer. "People are going to twist this either way," she said. "They will," he said. They'll say I played the rich girl card. Some will say I embarrassed him just to prove a point. And they'll be wrong, she added, leaning on the counter. But what's the point of always being calm? What's the point of biting your tongue, standing straight, doing everything right, if someone can still stop you, judge you, try to put you in a place they think you belong? Reginald let the silence breathe. I used to think, she continued, that if I was perfect enough I could outrun it, that if I dressed the part, spoke clearly, had all the right answers, maybe people would just let me live. He didn't interrupt. He knew this wasn't for him. It was for her. But yesterday, it didn't matter. I did everything right and he still saw me as a threat, or an inconvenience, or a mistake. Reginald nodded. That's because his eyes weren't trained to see the full version of you, just a version he thought he already knew. Zariah swallowed. So what now? Her father reached over and tapped her phone. You've got their attention. Say something worth hearing. That afternoon, Zariah sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Not for drama, not for clout, just clarity. She typed slowly. No hashtags, no edits, no filter. Yesterday I flew home from Atlanta. I flew first class because my father gifted me the ticket for graduating early from my program. At LAX I was pulled aside without reason and questioned by a man who saw my presence as a problem. I've been taught to stay calm, to respond, not react. I did, but I shouldn't have had to. My father is a businessman, a leader. He's also a father who raised me to know my worth. That officer didn't know who I was, and that's the problem. Because respect shouldn't come from who your father is. It should come from who you are, from the moment you walk in. I didn't post this for attention. I posted it because I'm tired of having to be composed in situations where I shouldn't be targeted in the first place. We don't want special treatment. We want equal treatment. Dignity has no dress code. She hit post, closed the laptop. No dramatic music, no fireworks, just truth. Her father passed behind her a few minutes later, resting his hand briefly on her shoulder. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. But the real moment of clarity, what this would mean for Zariah and others like her, would come in the days that followed when strangers started reaching out with stories of their own. 3 days later, Zariah's inbox looked like a flood zone. Not from brands or news outlets, though there were plenty of those, but from real people. Dozens of emails, hundreds of DMs, and voice messages that cracked mid-sentence. Young women, older men, flight attendants, nurses, college students,